We are anonymous. We do not bow to power. We do not worship propaganda. And we do not confuse spectacle with truth. And right now, the truth is ugly. Just in, Donald Trump shared a video of Iran's biggest bridge coming tumbling down, never to be used again, and he did it like a showman selling destruction as strength. He posted the footage with a warning that much more was to follow, and then pushed Iran to make a deal before it was too late. Before there was nothing left of what he said could still become a great country. That is not diplomacy. That is not leadership. That is a threat wrapped in theater, delivered by a man who has always treated human lives like props in his own performance. On air, the reaction was pure celebration. The segment rolled with the kind of triumphalist tone we have come to expect. Kylie introduced it as President Trump, issuing a powerful shot to the Iranian regime alongside a video. Harris echoed the message over the footage, saying Iran's biggest bridge comes tumbling down, never to be used again, with much more to follow. Then came the familiar pressure line. It is time for Iran to make a deal before it is too late, and before there is nothing left. The bridge footage was shown like a trophy. They stared at it, talked about figures in Iran looking at it, talked about it disassembling, talked about what it would become, as if the collapse of critical infrastructure were some kind of cinematic climax, rather than a warning sign of how far this insanity has gone. Lara said this was something we have never seen before. She said Trump has used videos and footage from all these different attacks the United States has carried out in Iran, and that it has been very powerful. She said she could not remember another president doing this. She said when you see it, you see the might of the United States military. You see the consequences of not coming to the table. And you see the ultimate disruption of a country that is just going to continue on this path. She called it impressive. She called Trump masterful for continuing to send warnings and post videos like this. Think about that. A bridge falls, a country burns, civilians die, and they call it masterful. That is the moral sickness of Trumpism in one frame. Death repackaged as branding. Kayleigh then pushed the rhetoric even further, saying Trump was basically telling Iran he would bomb them into the Stone Age if they did not come to the table and end this. Harris jumped in with what she said had caught her eye, arguing that the IDF had identified a financial center tied to how Iran pays for parts of its military, calling that critical to know, and saying it had happened in just the last couple of hours. Then she brought up a letter from Iran's president, Massoud, and said it was fascinating because he wanted people to see Iran differently. She quoted the line that despite its historical and geographical advantages, Iran has never in its modern history chosen the path of aggression, expansion, colonialism, or domination. She quoted the claim that despite possessing military superiority over many of its neighbors, Iran has never initiated war. And right there on air, they mocked it. They said Iran hit Dubai. They said Iran had initiated war. They insisted that no matter what had been happening between the United States, Israel, and Iran had decided to go to war with its neighbors. Then came the menu of demands. Kayleigh said Iran had a choice: end its missiles program and contain what the panel framed as its wider destabilizing behavior.
They said no to all
Guy
over
said
and over
Iran
again
had
because
said
they
no
are
to all of that because the regime was fixated on getting nuclear
learned
weapons,
from this regime
and that
repeatedly
for decades
when they say death to America, they mean it. They take
He said
actions and
Iran
steps
takes
to
actions
that effect,
and
which is
steps
why
toward
it is
that
intolerable
goal,
for them to have
which is why
nuclear
it is
weapons
intolerable
and
for
the
them to have
conventional
nuclear
missile shield,
weapons and a
basically
conventional
an
missile
umbrella to
shield
protect
serving
a
as an
nuclear
umbrella to
program.
protect
We have
that
the
nuclear
Israelis doing
program. He praised the Israelis for doing what he called yeoman's work with the United States on this. He said the Gulf Arab states were on board. He complained that many traditional allies were not being helpful at all. Even though, he said, the world had just learned Iran had been lying about missiles in its possession that could reach almost all of Europe. He said some NATO allies were not even allowing U.S. aircraft to fly through their airspace, while Washington was trying to defeat Iran's nuclear missile program. He said that should disturb Americans. He singled out the French, the Spanish, and especially the Italians, saying Americans would be looking at them with side-eye if this was how they were going to behave. Caliph returned to the imagery again, saying it was so powerful because this was the largest bridge in Iran, and now it was smoldering. She said if she were in the alliance and looking at this, Iran was the biggest threat to the world in her view, especially because it was aligned with China and Russia. Then she asked why those allies would not step up and help and allow the Iranian people to rise up. Rosanna answered that maybe those countries were afraid for themselves because the Iranians had been sending missiles all over the place and because of their boats and ships. She reminded viewers that Trump had said Iran was going to be hit extremely hard over the next several weeks, and argued that he was now living up to the words he had used the night before. Kayleigh then asked Harris about what she called the tangential idea of action alongside the United States, saying together it was domineering. Harris answered with the names of the operations, Epic Fury and Roaring Lion, and said that when it came to Israel and the United States, there was no daylight between them in terms of what Iran needed to look like when both countries pulled back. Iran could not get a nuclear weapon. She said that was the deal breaker. No daylight, no separation, no distance, just total alignment. She said Israel had to fight a little differently because of its proximity to what she called this killer. She talked about the missiles, the drones, the swarming attacks, and said people in Tel Aviv were spending a lot of time in bomb shelters, giving up a lot of freedom, and being injured. She said they understood this was necessary. She said she prayed for them because it was Passover, it was Easter, and the enemy hated us because of how we believe. Then she said it plainly. We are hitting them so hard. We are doing what Trump said we would do. There it is again. The same cult logic. Trump says it, bombs fall, and the television chorus calls it destiny. Kayleigh turned back to Lara and said she was intrigued by her point that Trump was using video, that it was the art of the deal, that he is a deal maker, and that everything he does and puts out is always sending a message. She said it was a pretty clear message to the regime. Lara
and it's
agreed.
Important to know about this
She
because
said
the
you can
IDF
talk
today
about
too has
something,
hit
but
the
when you see it
financial
with your
center
own
for how
eyes,
Iran
it
pays
hits a little
in most
differently.
Part, for
She
its
said
military.
that is why
so that
this
is
was
critical
important,
to know. That happened in
not
the last
just
2
for
hours.
Iran, but
the
for other
President
adversaries
Masoud
around the world
Pezeshkian
as well.
wrote a letter this week.
She said
of
if you
Iran.
want to talk about
And
what
I
the
thought
United
this was
States of
fascinating.
America
He wants
can
people
do,
to see them
take
differently.
a look at this video.
He says,
take a look at all
despite
the
its
videos
historical and
Trump has
geographical
posted
Iran.
of bombs
that.
dropping,
Just
of
tell me, what a warning.
explosions,
Well, by
of
the
the
way,
United
this
States
has
targeting
been
something the
that
size
we've never
of
seen
basically
before. The
a
way
fingernail.
the president has used.
She said the U.S. military is really impressive, that the footage carries much more gravity when you see it like this, that we have never seen something like this happen, and that we have never had a president like this willing to do this sort of thing. She
Because the
said
IDF today too has hit the financial center for how Iran pays in most
for the rest of the world.
For its military. So that is critical.
Then she circled back to the allies and said Trump had talked about how disappointed he was with NATO, but it also said the people who rely on the Strait of Hormuz to get their oil need to step up now. She stressed that the United States does not need that oil and said other countries were going to have to do something about it. She called Trump's speech the night before really powerful and said he had sent a message then and was sending a message now with this video as well. And then the segment leaned into sacrifice and war mythology. Kayleigh said they would be remiss if they did not mention the 13 heroes who had fallen in the operation. She said one of those young men had 7-month-old twins. Another had another little child, and that these were heroes who had given their lives, and that Trump takes that very seriously and wants to finish the job. Guy said Trump had spoken movingly about going to receive the final return of the remains of those heroes and to meet the families going through the grieving process. He said war is a terrible thing. He said people could still be proud of what the military was achieving, and that there had been an enormous amount of accomplishment in just the span of a month, despite what many in the news media were saying from day one. And then the transcript cuts off. But the pattern is already complete. Fear, spectacle, loyalty, escalation, and the constant demand that viewers accept all of it as strength. Now step back from the studio lights and the applause track. Public reporting says the bridge strike killed at least 8 people and injured around 95. Reports also say the attack hit a massive suspension bridge linking Tehran and Karaj, a structure with both strategic and civilian significance, while the broader war has already rattled oil markets, intensified attacks across the region, and drawn warnings from the United Nations and governments around the world about escalation and humanitarian consequences. And still, Trump behaves like a man auditioning for his own trailer, posting collapse footage and promising more. That is who he is. He turns foreign policy into extortion, war into conflict, and destruction into personal marketing. He does not calm a crisis. He feeds on it. He does not lead with wisdom. He leads with ego, coercion, and the obscene belief that if he looks strong on a screen, the suffering underneath does not matter. Anonymous sees through this. Trump wants you hypnotized by the blast, by the bridge, by the message, by the fantasy of domination. Don't be. Question the spectacle, to question the lies. Question every politician and every media mouthpiece that sells war as greatness. If you watched this video, do not just scroll on. Speak up, share the truth, and refuse to let propaganda turn human destruction into entertainment. We are anonymous. We are watching. Expect us.